Bears. More bears and even more bears. Salmon until the doctor arrives, sea lions, eagles, deer, and otters. Glaciers, dirt roads, breathtaking nature, old railroad bridges, fear, abandoned mines, fog and repairs. 6,000 kilometers from Alaska to Vancouver in a 36-year-old Mercedes four-wheel drive truck in its prime. Two German best-agers on a magnificent road trip south. Will we make it to Vancouver in 4 weeks? And what else will happen? In the last video, I drove the truck 8,000 kilometers from Las Vegas to Anchorage to meet my wife, Annette. We wanted to spend the next 4 weeks traveling together from Alaska to Vancouver. We celebrated her arrival on the first evening at a small local brewery in Anchorage. They brew great beers there, but we only managed to get through half of the menu. 60 kilometers outside of Anchorage is the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, a rescue center for sick or abandoned animals. The absolute highlight here are 2 grizzly bears. If you get that close to them in the wild, you definitely have a problem. The center for outdoor activities in the area is the town of Stewart, with a population of 2,800. Hiking, fishing, Glacier and Kenai Fjord tours are offered here. The weather in Alaska often comes in blocks. It's nice for a few days, and then it rains for a few days straight. Kenai Fjords National Park can only be visited by plane or boat. We waited for better conditions for our tour. The nature out here is absolutely incredible. Glaciers, otters, sea eagles, seagulls, and sea lions. There are also orcas and whales out here, but unfortunately, we didn't have any luck seeing them.
The largest sea lions in the world, the giant adult males.
Probably the most famous hike in Alaska is the one to the Harding Icefield Glacier. On the way there, we found one of our absolute dream spots in Alaska, in the riverbed of the glacier, surrounded by 2,000-meter high mountains. Depending on how far you drive into the riverbed, you don't necessarily need four-wheel drive, but it's good to have it. We set off early the next morning. The hike has an elevation gain of 1,200 meters, depending on how far you walk. Alaska is definitely bear country, and soon we encountered the first family with small children who had abandoned the tour because of a grizzly bear spotting. We were therefore nervous, but at least we had a can of bear spray with us. Cyclists and individual hikers are statistically the most frequently attacked. Fortunately, we soon met another hiking group. At some point, someone had used bear spray, which is really bad for the lungs. Our German swear words, such as Nassenbär, Coati, Stinkbär, Stinkbär, and Kackbär, Poop Bear, were enthusiastically received, and with clapping, shouting, and singing, we reached the top after just 1.5 hours. There are plenty of fantastic places to camp in Alaska, but not all of them are as beautiful as this one. Annette had brought our sourdough starter from Germany, so we regularly baked our own bread. It was slowly time to head south. The Knik Glacier is located 70 kilometers west of Anchorage and has a length of 40 kilometers. I had spent a long time researching whether and how it is possible to drive to the glacier tongue with a car. This is possible on the north side of the Knik River, but we soon had to give up because our truck was too high. Plan B then took us to one of our most beautiful camps on the trip, near the banks of the Knik River. To get there, we first had to cross a river, the water depth of which was, of course, no problem for us, as some rivers in Iceland had been deeper. A few kilometers upstream, we camped here for 2 nights. 2,000-meter high mountains in the background, the river running, a cold beer and a campfire. A dream come true. The river is also used by locals as a starting point for outdoor activities, although not every vehicle survives the crossing. In summer, the salmon begin to swim upstream from the sea, as they need fresh water to spawn. The greatest attraction to be found here is the Salmon Gulch hatchery, a salmon breeding station located at a waterfall. The mouth of the river is blocked, so only a few salmon make it to the waterfall. The others are either eaten first or make it to the hatchery, where they also die. The show is as fascinating as it is depressing. The massacre in the form is man-made. Seals, sea lions, seagulls, and bears only need to open their mouths, and their prey swims right in. Alaska was not only mined for gold, but also for copper. McCarthy Road is the most spectacular road in Alaska, almost 100 kilometers long, leading to the Kennecott Mine. A railway line was built specifically to transport the heavy copper ore, which is now used as a road.
Ganz schön eng. Psst. Hast du die Augen zu?
Ja, das ist richtig.
At the beginning, the trail is still in fairly good condition, but later it becomes incredibly bumpy, almost shaking your teeth out of your mouth. Copper was discovered here in 1900, with traces of gold and silver. Since mining so far north was difficult and expensive, a mining company was founded and even a railroad line was built here. The ore had a copper content of up to 70% and was the richest copper mine in the world for many years. The buildings are only the ore processing center. The ore was extracted from mines in the surrounding area and transported here by cable car. The last train ran in 1938, and in the 1960s, an order was even given to demolish the buildings. Fortunately, however, the mine was designated a historic district, and some of the buildings were even rebuilt. The power plant was powered by oil-fired steam engines and was even the most powerful power plant in Alaska for many years. Alcohol and prostitution were not allowed in the mine, so the town of McCarthy was built nearby, which even had a hospital, school, bars, and nightclubs. After mining ended, McCarthy became a ghost town, and it wasn't until the late 1970s that people began to settle here again. We found McCarthy to be really cool and rancid, a real Western town. It is now mid-August, and Indian summer is slowly setting in on the high elevations of the Alaska Highway. We cross the border back into Canada, and parts of the Alaska Highway are in terrible condition, especially where the permafrost under the road is melting. In the morning, the heater is already running, and despite the constant rain, I have to do some maintenance work. Whitehorse is the capital of the Yukon Territory in Canada, and still has a few old buildings that are worth seeing. From here, all the material was transported on the Yukon River by steamboats to Dawson City, to the gold claims. Not far away is Emerald Lake with its incredible colors, but these can only be fully enjoyed with a drone. They say that the Carcross Desert is the smallest desert in the world, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to play with the truck in the sand. Annette didn't dare and watched the whole event from outside. I couldn't get to the top of the dune with road pressure in the tires, and airing down was too much effort for me.
Jetzt steht er.
Two long days of driving on the Alaska Highway lay ahead, so it's good to be able to shift the drivers. The Stewart Cassiar Highway branches off south near Watson Lake and is one of the most beautiful roads in British Columbia for the first 600 kilometers to Stewart on the Pacific Ocean. In the morning, there was already frost, but the sky was bright blue. Shortly afterwards, thick fog rolled in. Then the sun came out again, followed by rain. The road is narrow and lonely, but in good condition, and the landscape is spectacular if you can see it. To get to Hyder, Alaska, you have to cross the Canadian/USA border. The road is a dead end and ends after 50 kilometers somewhere in the mountains. Hyder had its heyday in the 1950s, when several mines were operating in the mountains. Now the place is almost a ghost town, with only a handful of houses still inhabited, and the old school buses and mining equipment rotting in the woods. One reason to come here is the Salmon Glacier. Funny enough, it's actually in Canada, so you cross the border again somewhere along the 35-kilometer track. I had seen the route in a few YouTube videos a few years ago and searched for quite a while before I found it again on the map. The road is easy to drive on and offers incredible views of the mountains and the glacier when the weather is fine. But driving the track in rain and fog also had its charm. After all, Salmon Glacier is the 5th largest glacier in Canada and reaches a height of over 2,000 meters. The viewpoint directly opposite was also shrouded in thick fog, of course, but after a long coffee break, the fog fortunately cleared for a few minutes. The second attraction in Hyder, and one of our absolute highlights, is a bear viewing station above Fish Creek, where incredible numbers of salmon swim upstream to spawn in the summer. The place is like a convenient fish supermarket for bears, where they only have to bend down to eat. The salmon usually die after spawning anyway, but the mass death of fish is still depressing. The bears usually come to eat at dusk. We were so fascinated that we were back there at 5 a.m. the next morning, and were lucky enough to see a bear again. We found our camp for the night at the mouth of Fish Creek, where it flows into the Pacific Ocean. It's still 1,500 kilometers from here to Vancouver, which we covered in 3 days, and it was quite strange to see a traffic light again after such a long time. On the third day, after traveling 500 kilometers across the amazing Rocky Mountains, We reached the ferry to Vancouver Island in the late afternoon. The crossing takes about 2 hours, with Vancouver passing by on the horizon, and those who have the necessary funds own a house on one of the many small islands. Vancouver Island is not a small island. It is 450 kilometers in length and about 100 kilometers in width. The landscape is extremely diverse, ranging from extensive coastal rainforests to high alpine terrain and its own ski resort. And it has a mild climate by Canadian standards. The rivers are extremely rich in fish. According to a fish counting facility, 40 million salmon swim over here every year. Deep in the forests are the medicine bowls, which are so secret that they are not even signposted. The pools with their deep green water seem harmless, but the many crosses along the way show that when the water level is high, it can quickly become life-threatening. It is now the end of August, our last week together has begun, and of course, we can only visit a small part of the island during this time. The most famous beaches on the island, Cox Bay and Long Beach, are located in the far west and are also popular for surfing. As is often the case on the Pacific coast, the shore is often shrouded in fog, even if the sun is shining a few hundred meters inland. The biodiversity here is incredible. There are even said to be wolves and pumas. The black bear population is the highest in North America. And when one of them started sprinting in our direction, we decided on a quick strategic retreat, despite having bear spray with us. Tofino is the center for outdoor activities on the West Coast, including fishing and sea kayaking. We are old saltwater noses and kayakers, but with the strong tidal range on the Pacific coast, you need to know the area well, so we decided to go on a guided tour. We were incredibly lucky with the weather, as there was thick fog on the coast again, but the sun came out just as we set off. Many islands and deep bays make the area ideal for kayaking, and there are several floating houses in the bays. For the next night, we had chosen a secluded campsite on one of the deepest fjords on the island, the Alurnie Inlet. However, the only road leading there was closed 10 kilometers before our destination due to a forest fire. We had two options: either take a 250-kilometer detour via the southern tip of the island or drive 50 kilometers on forest tracks to bypass the fire. I wasn't sure if the latter was a good idea, so we first drove over a burned-out section of forest that was still smoking a little to the nearest ridge to check out the conditions. No smoke or fire in the nearby valleys, so we decided to proceed. Driving in the forest is legal in North America, and the main tracks are easily drivable thanks to timber transport. However, as was to be expected, the route became steeper, narrower, and obviously barely used. We were able to drive around the first rock, but then we had to clear the way and later drive over a nameless pass and steeply downhill back to the original route. 4 hours for 50 kilometers. The last few weeks had been hard on the truck, and in the evening, I noticed that the bracket for the mud guard was broken. Thank God we hadn't lost it on the way. For the next few days, we continued without a mud guard. On the southwest coast of Vancouver Island, a small but very bumpy dirt road leads through the beautiful rainforests. Countless legal campsites await here, but unfortunately we ran out of time.
Das ist ja mal schön, wenn man da runterfahren, da wo die da stehen.
Victoria, at the very south of Vancouver Island, is the capital of British Columbia. Campsites are rare, so we made an exception and did some stealth roadside camping without our pull-out ladder. The easiest way to explore the city is by hop-on, hop-off bus. Villas, historic buildings, parks, a great harbor, a Chinatown, the narrowest alley in the city, markets, and lots of restaurants make this city one of the most beautiful in Canada. Just a few kilometers north are the Butchart Gardens, a fantastic garden complex built by a wealthy family on the site of a limestone quarry and concrete plant. The park attracts over 1 million visitors every year and is still owned by the family today. We returned to the mainland by ferry through the fantastic island world, and now it was time for a little truck maintenance.
Children's play area.
We had our broken fender welded at a metalworking shop for 20 Canadian dollars, which was more than fair.
Mechanic team. Sieht gut aus. Solid.
There was also a truck wash nearby, which was urgently needed after 6,000 kilometers. This type of business is firmly in Indian hands here. The truck has never been so clean. Driving a truck around an unknown city is never fun, but it's good to have someone with you. Granville Island is the hottest spot in Vancouver. Marinas, a floating house district, markets, an artist's quarter, and lots of pubs. You can hang out here all day without getting bored. The next day, Annette unfortunately had to return to Germany. After 4 fantastic weeks together, saying goodbye is hard. I had the thankless task of driving the truck 6,000 kilometers across the continent to Halifax so it could be shipped back to Germany. But that's another story. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. See you soon.